And we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Agency Operators Podcast. My name is Pasha. Today I'm joined by Yaman Alpata from Mega Merchant. How are you, Yaman?
Thank you very much. How are you?
Very good. I'm so happy to have you here. I know you have quite a lot of really interesting experience, and I'm super curious to kind of pick your brain on some of these topics. So I understand that you have over 20 years career in multiple different companies. A lot of it was corporate, but like the big one towards the end of the corporate saga was Alibaba, which is, I mean, that's amazing to me just because I definitely, I've been an e-commerce seller for a long time, and I've been working with Alibaba in the past before they became like a public company. Not many people knew about Alibaba and watched them grow and become the
Yeah.
giant that they are. So that's I'm definitely curious to hear your story, and kind of what led you to start Mega Merchant and kind of what you guys do there and some of the trends that you're seeing. So super excited to have you on, and I would love to hear, just as far back as you can, like how your path went. Like, share your story.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, firstly. So I'm super honored to join you on this webinar or like live show. So basically, I divide my whole career into two. The first part has been I was like a more of M&A guy, and I was mostly involved in finance, corporate finance, like in working for like large family offices and doing mostly great greenfield investments or like M&As. Back then, the startup word was not invented yet, so now it's being called like mostly corporate entrepreneurship. But back then, when you said like you have your own company, people were thinking like mostly you don't have a job.
Mm,
So it was like it wasn't cool back then. But then like the startup word started coming into like on a more cool sense in like 2010s. And basically that where my second part of my career started with e-commerce, which I firstly met with in Trendyol, which is currently the number one marketplace in the whole region of Turkey, Middle East, and the whole like MENA region. It's like a $10 billion company now, and it's been acquired by Alibaba. So I worked there in the scale up times. Then I worked for Epsiburada, which was back then the number one. And I founded the marketplace there, and had the opportunity to onboard like for the first time tens of thousands of different sellers from different categories into the platform, and basically building something very similar to Amazon in the other part of the world. Um, and in like late 2010s, one thing started catching my attention, that the cross-border trade is growing significantly, and as the marketplace is getting bigger and bigger and scaling quite fast, their catalogs as well. So we started having like some ideas how we can utilize this catalog, millions of products in other regions of the world. So that of course like comes with a lot of questions like how do you do logistics, how do you do content listing or localizations, how do you do the marketing, etc. So we for the first time we did like marketplace to marketplace models. We started connecting with other marketplaces of the world in the other parts of the world, and then exchanging catalogs and doing the first phases or first types of drop shipping from a marketplace to another marketplace. So it's not like a from a seller to the customer type of classic drop shipping, but it was like a marketplace to marketplace drop shipping. So that was like quite interesting back then, and numbers grew significantly. Uh, and where my roads crossed with Alibaba in 2019. I received a job offer, but that was in China. So they told me, you have to come to China to learn like how things work, because the Western e-commerce is quite different than what is in the east part of the world. And the aspect is different. The supply chain, the marketing, the thinking is quite different. So in 2019, I moved to China. I started living in Hangzhou, in the Alibaba headquarters. I was like one of the very few first foreigners, let's say. Um, and but by the way, I thought that it was like a huge global company and had like a lot of expats, huge expat communities, which was actually not the case. But of course, like number of people, number of foreigners and expat workers increasing every day, but not many in China. But I had the opportunity to understand and how the Chinese supply chain and the merchandising works. So basically, I also realized that the China supply chain started dominating the cross-border world, like maybe almost 10 years ago, in the very beginning of 2010s. Um, so um, and I was basically, when I joined Alibaba, I was basically responsible for the AliExpress global expansion team. And the idea was, yes, I mean, there's a huge supply chain coming from China, but we should also have we should also build local supply chains, like a local supply chain in France, so that the localized marketplace could benefit both from like an abundant supply chain from China, plus local supply chain from France or from other regions of Europe. So we replicated the same thing in Russia, in Turkey, in France, in Spain, and then later on in Brazil and Latin America as well. So after like working some couple of years in China, I moved to Brazil and started working on the Latin American project. We onboarded like all Alibaba companies in Sao Paulo, and started building an infrastructure for the Latin American expansion. Um, During these experiences, I worked with a lot of Chinese colleagues, but also I worked with a lot of different sellers from different parts of the world and with different backgrounds or profiles. So there were like small sellers, SMEs, retailers, large manufacturers or top brands, and from different parts of the world. Um, we probably onboarded like maybe hundreds of thousands of sellers from different regions, and basically the success ratio was not as good as the Chinese. So when we were like onboarding, for instance, 100 sellers in somewhere of the part of the world, basically only 3 or 4 sellers were able to get consistent orders after 6 months, which was quite low number. The other 97% of the people were basically stuck at somewhere, like account opening, even like, or
Mm.
list, or localizing, or logistics, or like marketing, campaign management, or profitability. So they were not able to continue with their sales, or they like at least 50% of those sellers, of those potential sellers, basically they were not even to able to list more than one product. So and that basically made me think of how Chinese are doing this and why the ratio is low for the others, like Russian or European or US sellers, or like Brazilian sellers. And then where I basically met for the first time with the Chinese mega merchants, or they call it also like trade partners, TPs actually. It's been also called like Tmall partner, Taobao partner. It emerged like that. So in the very early days of like e-commerce boom in China, There were also like tons of small sellers, and the success ratio was low. And then over time, they emerged mega sellers, mega merchants they call it, or trade partners, which basically built infrastructures and grow in size and consolidated the other ones under their umbrella. That doesn't necessarily mean as like FBA rollups or FBA aggregators. So they don't necessarily buy the brand, but they buy the inventory, or they buy in a consignment mode, or like in such in a certain way that they can resell the products in the global marketplaces. So those companies started emerging in 2015 for the first time. Now there are like hundreds of companies like this. A lot of them are already like exceeding already unicorns. Maybe we don't know them. Our knowledge about the Chinese ecosystem are very limited actually in the Western world. But there are like tons of such companies who are already like also Nasdaq listed. Or Hong Kong Stock Exchange listed, and like billion-dollar companies. So they are basically running the whole infrastructure now from China to the rest of the world in terms of cross-border e-commerce. Even Temu, today emerged such as company, or Shein. I remember that back in 2019, when I first I met the first sellers in the AliExpress. Shein was like one of the large sellers, was one of the mega merchants or mega sellers in the AliExpress ecosystem. Later on, they built their own app, and they built the pipeline to the final consumers and started shutting down their stores in the marketplaces they were selling with. So later on, such mega merchants also emerged into platforms like Temu or Shein. So that's how basically things work. And my idea was like, okay, why shall we not build such an infrastructure or a pipeline for the other parts for these sellers who have low success ratio due to lots of reasons. And like one of the also like important reasons is like we all know that marketplaces are getting more and more difficult every day. The rules change quite fast. The marketplaces are more and more selective. They put more barriers, or they increase the SLAs. They introduce new tools or um, uh, new expense items every day. So that's basically because they are saturated. They are saturated for listings. Maybe like I remember the first days when I was onboarding new sellers to the platform, we were chasing new sellers, and we were after their Excel files, and we had teams who were like importing those data files into the systems and listing the products. And the account opening process was just like one with an email, or like sending all the necessary documents through attachments. Now, it's getting more and more, the KYC process is getting every day more difficult. So these makes like this the ordinary seller's life quite difficult. The ordinary sellers, the ordinary factories, they just want to sell. Okay, so they don't want to deal with the complexity. They want to go to like larger audiences, and they want to sell more, but they don't want to deal with like tons of different rules and regulations and new tools, etc. So this is not their core business or not core priority. Also, like taxation is another issue, like, or local laws and regulations is quite difficult. Yesterday, or like couple of weeks ago, I read a new article issued by Market Pulse saying that only 1% of sellers in the US, they were basically opened up to Europe, which is like a billion customers there, and they have like a significant purchasing power. But the 99% of US sellers think that it's too difficult. They don't want to deal with the European, laws and regulations and taxations and company openings and warehousing and more fragmented way of marketplace infrastructure. So that's why we built Mega Merchant, to make the life easier for those sellers who wants to explore new horizons, new marketplaces, new regions, and increase number of customers, and ditch away from the increasing competition. So I remember even like in a market like Turkey, or we had like only 6 7 years ago, we had only 10 to 15,000 sellers in the whole market. Now it's almost like a million. So
Wow.
it's so crazily increasing. It's not only happening in Turkey, in all like every parts of the other world. So number of sellers increasing, which basically increase the competition, and which basically decrease the margins, which the marketplaces want. So they are after their commissions, and they want the conversion rates to increase, prices to decrease, and introduce new commissions, or increase their commissions. So um, this is why I started building Mega Merchant almost more than 2 years ago, um, where we act as a B2B to C marketplace, and as a act as an intermediary platform between the brands and the platforms. And you can think it of a shopping mall inside a shopping mall. So it's just like more organized, and we invest not into the final consumers. We don't push them to download our own app, or to come to our website, but we basically invest into the digital real estate, which we call like product detail pages. So we create these product detail pages, we manage it for the brands, and we co-invest together into these links. So that's basically what we do.
That's amazing. Wow, thank you for all that. That's a lot. Um, I guess my first question is, did you learn any other languages with all your travels to China and Brazil?
Yeah, of course. So it's quite interesting actually. So I when I first landed in China, I took like private lessons. The company was also pushing for that, and I did like learned at least like 6 months one-to-one lessons, and after 6 months I realized that, and considering that I was almost like 40 years old when I first went to China and didn't know Chinese, I realized that okay, I cannot write, that's for sure. I cannot speak, that's for sure. But I realized that I can understand. So
Okay.
basically, I worked on a very specific thing, that day to day speaking, and also e-commerce speaking, or e-commerce understanding. So because like it's a huge world, right? So, and after 40 years old and having like a lot of responsibilities, it's almost impossible to learn a language like Chinese. So that's why I divided and conquered.
Hmm.
After like almost 2.5 years, I was able to understand in meetings what people were discussing, and also reply in English, so they understand me, I understand them. So we had we built
That's
a interesting way of working together.
that's still very impressive. I mean, for you to be in like a business meeting and like really even understand what the
You,
flow
you
is
should
about.
you should see the faces when I first did this. Normally, like in all meetings, we start in English, 5 minutes. Later on, it turns to Chinese. And one day, I think, like after 1.5 years, I mean, people were discussing in Chinese, and I said, no, 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 we can do it. We should be doing like this. And there was like 15 people in the meeting room. They were all, oh my god, this guy's understanding us. So that was like an aha moment for everyone. And then, of course, like it's never I can speak, or I never spoke in Chinese, because I mean, culturally also they don't want you to speak Chinese. So that was the by the way, that was the quite opposite experience that I have in Brazil. And in
Mm.
Brazil, for instance, how bad your pronunciation are, people encourage you like crazy to speak in Portuguese. So that's why, for instance, my learning Portuguese and speaking Portuguese was way easier. Um, I lived in Brazil for almost a year, and during that period of time, I also look like a Brazilian, so it's a like a not super different from it's a cosmopolitan environment. So,
Mhm.
and I can speak a little bit. Nobody was caring much about like how bad you speak or how bad you pronounce it. So they encourage you to speak. So it was that basically increase your learning capability and motivation as well. So
So
it was
cool.
easy. Yeah, yeah.
I was really fascinated by the point that you made about how different and how little we know about the China and how everything works over there on the Western side. And I think that having that language understanding at least also helps you to get insight. And I think that's something that could be interesting for us to discuss, and something that I personally am very fascinated by is what are those differences? Because obviously China is spending a lot of time trying to understand the American consumer, and there's all of this controversy right now about TikTok Shop, which we might probably not want to get into too deep on politics. But obviously China has a big interest in what we're doing here, and they're the ones supplying so much of the Western world in terms of the goods. So it's not so much on the other side. So how do you see the infrastructure being different? How does marketing work in China? How does e-commerce work? Like in a nutshell, what are like the things that really stand out for you?
Well, the when you look at from the China to the Western world, it's like I don't know. It's like Mars. It's so different. It's so different. And the number one reason for that is that we come from a civilization where we lived the retail zero point 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. So the e-commerce developed after the shopping malls, and there was like organized retail, which on top of it we had e-commerce, and then it switched to a omni-channel.
Hmm.
China basically uh, skipped that part, skipped that organized retail, and directly jumped into a mobile-driven e-commerce world. And I remember, like again, in 2015, 2016, we were talking, okay, this year will be the year of mobile. The mobile penetration will, for the first time, pass the PC penetration. So I remember those days. China never was like that. So they immediately jumped into e-commerce. They immediately jumped into mobile world. So they skipped some part of the retail. So that's why they're thinking of e-commerce is quite different than us. That's number one. Number two is also the shopping habits. So from a Western from the Western world perspectives or practices, e-commerce should be is not fun, right? So it's very functional. So if you go to Amazon, you don't see too much things. So it's quite simple. It's white. It's very organized. No pop-ups. No colors or not much colors. So and it's rather than like a functional world rather than an emotional world. In the Chinese e-commerce, it's quite the opposite. It's all about entertainment. It's all about sharing, colors, um, time to action, call to actions, and a lot of excitement. So also, like when you look at the Black Friday and Double 11, the two important days, it's also like quite different. It's Double 11 is like a, more like a festival rather than where people like, look crazy for deals. It's more like entertainment for people. So the shopping habits are also quite different from that perspective. Um, and from the logistics perspective, is also like, China logistics is way different than the Western world. That's also like because of a little bit, um, technology plus the human capital, or the cheaper labor compared to the Western world, and also like less regulations on that front as well. But that also gives some boost to the e-commerce. So um, I think these are the key differences when you look at Tmall, Taobao, Pinduoduo, TikTok. This live streaming is a huge thing. Influencer business, the
Hmm.
KOLs in Chinese, terms, key opinion leaders. This is like a very integral part of today's shopping e-commerce. We have also some brands that we are working with that we sell in Tmall and Taobao, and also on TikTok, in like in a KOL day, which way they do the live streaming, the sales like maybe makes like 15 or 20x in just like 2 hours compared to the whole daily average before that. So those live streams have like one of the most important now selling points. It's almost like I can say it makes 50 to 60% of total sales now through live streaming. In the
Wow.
Western world, we don't see that. So yes, there are some attempts, and TikTok is getting more and more important every day, but their shares are still very low to where we can see of an impact or impact of people's lives.
So
So
that's amazing. So like they are the originators of this sort of like social selling type of situation where social media and entertainment and your friendships with people online and discussions are intertwined with commerce. So marketing in a way in China is far easier because I feel like we in the Western world, like you are advertising to somebody on Facebook, they're not trying to buy something, but you're showing up as an ad, and then it's like multiple touch points until okay, maybe I'll, eventually like I'll try out the product and maybe it's the right time now. Whereas in China, it's not like that at all. It's very much expected and accepted, right? Where it's just like you're scrolling and looking at things that you're interested in, and things pop up and you buy it as you go and all of that. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah, very very quick like this.
yeah.
It's not like you don't think, you just go and buy. That's also a bit because of the payment systems. So the payment mechanisms are also like very much easier compared to the Western world. So there's no credit card, but all goes through like QR codes, and
Mm.
that also makes life quite easier and simplified. Even like two months ago, I was in Shanghai back, and I was again like I saw beggars begging with QR codes. So they
No
were like,
way.
yeah, people like here, and they had like a with their QR codes on the streets of Shanghai, they were just like asking for money on the streets. So even the beggars or like people
High
on
tech.
the street.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? Like how often do you have $1 in your pocket, but you always have your QR code, your phone, right? I mean, beggars are smart in that way. um, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And I was also curious about like the logistics. So in the Western world, I mean, like I'll take Amazon or the infrastructure that we have here is you're shipping into a fulfillment center. There's FC transfers based on where they see a lot of the volume is coming from, and then just like local deliveries and distribution that kind of way. Like on a simplified level, that's pretty much how logistics works here. How is it different in China?
I can speak of like one example that I can show that tell in 2019. I was amazed. I went to a shopping mall, actually like a a supermarket. It's owned by Alibaba in Hangzhou. It's called Hema. And I shopped. That was like, and there was no cashiers, and you just pay with, your face. Although back then, Alipay was not able to scan my face because I had a beard and I had a Western face. But then they also fixed that problem as well. So that was, that was like a one thing that I was amazed, but that was not the thing. Um, I shopped everything, and then I had like a couple bags. I put everything into a one corner, and then um, that been elevated and up to the, up to the floor, and then went to somewhere else, and then it's been put automatically into the back of a motorcycle, and they know my address, and they bring all the packages to my address, to the locker just inside my, just next down to the apartment. And later on, you go, and with your QR code again, you go there and you pick up. So basically, when you shop something, you don't need to take it with you, and it will already been delivered to your home, to your locker. And each and every apartment basically has a locker in the apartment. Um, that was in 2019, by the way. So like it was almost 5 years ago. Um, and that was like something very common. So that wasn't something new. That was new to me, but that wasn't new to the Chinese. And a couple of years after that, even you don't need to go to the locker to pick up. A robot brings it to your door. So that was also quite interesting as well. So that's basically how logistics works.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's
Look at the, last mile delivery, how, just, think from this example how it's been optimized in almost like each and every sense. So it's a way different life. Of course, like I cannot tell that this is the same, structure in each and every city in China. It's been tiered, like tier one, tier two cities maybe have like 90% have these infrastructures. Of course, when you go to the rural cities, there's nothing like this, but they're building it as well. So
so. I mean, I always see like the Western world is very much like consumeristic in a way, right? Capitalism and consumerism is kind of like part of the same thing. But it sounds like actually this Chinese infrastructure is more like with the marketing, it's more impulse driven. And there's also like an ease there because of the convenience. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's like you feel like you can just buy things and it'll just show up and it's just very fluid. And the so it's actually even more consumeristic in a way. Is that seen in a negative way at all in China? Overconsumption of product, maybe buying things that you don't need, where I
mhm,
feel like the Western consumer, especially lately after the pandemic and economic tightening and everything that's going on, people are more conscious of the things that they're buying and trying to actually buy less or buy things that last longer, maybe not so cheap. So, spend a little bit more on something that might last a longer time, or, trying to be more strategic versus like that kind of like impulse driven. What do you
right,
think?
right. So um, like pandemic has changed a lot of things, and also, created a significant inflation in the whole world. So basically, because of the supply chain, in the because of supply chain problems, we have seen all that the container issues coming up.
Hmm.
And the one container was maybe like $2,000 increased to $20,000, which basically increased the quotients for inflation, and pushed up the prices. So people become more and more cautious about buying products. That's one part. The other part is, of course, like uh, the environmentalism and people thinking. But I see that is being more of a trend in Europe rather than US maybe. In Europe, people are getting more and more cautious about the more environmental thinking, and like re-commerce is getting more
Yeah.
and more popular in the European countries, especially like countries like Germany. So that also impacted, as you said, like consumer behavior as well. Nowadays, the most important concern is that the recession that has been expected in the U.S. Recently, impacting the markets in the very beginning of this week. And now, like everyone is waiting, probably the Fed's decision for the interest rates, which will in return, impact again customer behavior. So, um, from the as long as the interest rates remain high, people will be, spending less and will be more cautious, which we need to be, which we need to see some relaxations in the next few months, maybe. And also that's been a little bit also relevant to the U.S. Elections as well.
Right.
So I I think that we will see some, you know um, turnaround in 2025, but that's not going to be very quick. So that will probably be gradual.
Yes, but I think that the reason why everybody's and not to turn this into a macroeconomics conversation, but I think everything that the Fed does, whatever they make, whatever decision that they make on interest rates, whether they go up and down, it just shows people, it signals to people what's actually the state of the market.
Yeah,
And I think they're super mindful and careful about doing it, even if it's one way, they might actually go another way to not create a big problem. Because I think people's reactions in mass to those decisions are more impactful than the actual decision itself. Like if they change interest rates by like a, a fraction of a percent, people's reaction in the market is much more impactful. So, Yaman, I wanted to ask you about Mega Merchant. And if I was a customer of yours and I came to you and I said, hey, I have this company here in the US, we're selling this product, we're manufacturing it, let's say here in the USA, we're manufacturing, and we're thinking about doing a global expansion or doing some kind of expansion. It doesn't even have to be global because I know that there's many marketplaces. Let's say I just have a Shopify site and an Amazon store. What would you recommend, in terms of like levels of like priority? What have you seen be the most impactful? Is it, let's get you on TikTok, let's get you into Europe, let's get you like, what are the steps that you would say like most impact to least impact?
yep. So as I said, like we have learned that only 1% of US sellers basically selling in Europe, which is a huge and profitable plus rich market for e-commerce, and quite developed as well. So definitely expanding from a US seller's perspective into Europe or even to Middle East seems very logical. But of course, it comes with difficulties, and we basically claim to solve these difficulties. Number one is logistics, or let's say, sorry, number one is we act as merchant of record and importer of record. So you don't need to like open different um, accounts and manage different marketplaces, which is the reality of the Europe. So if you want to sell in Germany, I don't know, like if you what you sell, it depends on category, but there like it's a quite fragmented marketplace in terms of market in terms of marketplaces. You have, yes, Amazon, but Amazon is still number one, maybe number two, even number three in some categories. So you have Amazon, you have Otto, you have Kaufland, you have Zalando, you have About You have eBay. You have now you have Trendyol. there are like different marketplaces, and all of them are like good in some certain category. So and if you want to sell fashion, you have to be on Zalando or on About You. If you want to sell home products, then Otto is one of the good categories. Well, sorry, marketplaces. So you need to choose your marketplace wisely. If you want to sell in Poland, then, you have to consider Allegro. If you want to go to the CE region, then you have to consider Allegro and EMAG. If you want to go to Spain, there are different marketplaces. So yes, if you want to go to France, it's more fragmented. If you're going to Netherlands, yes, it's a small market, but it's like very rich, and the competition is comparably less. So basically, you can make a lot of money there, but there is a platform called Bol.com. So Amazon, it's beating Amazon. Um, so yes, Amazon gives you some you know upfront or like heads up, but it doesn't give you the full picture. So and all of these platforms, they require account opening, and their rules are significantly difficult compared to Amazon. Plus also they need sometimes local companies, they need customer service as per the Union laws and regulations. So basically, you cannot deal with. I mean, the 99% of the US sellers is somehow they are right. It's difficult to deal with these complexities. We solve these complexities as we act as merchant of record. We have already accounts set up and quite successful in all of these regions. So we work with the brands, we get brand authorization, we list their products, and we deal everything with integrations. So that's number one. Number two is the second challenge is the logistics. So shipping from France to, I don't know, like Poland is difficult, or from Germany to Netherlands is difficult. That's not only in terms of logistics costs and the routes, but also in terms of taxation as well. So it has different rules and regulations. So basically, we also solve this issue. So we have warehouses, not our own, but we work with integrated 3PLs, the best ones in Europe, in Germany, in Czech Republic, in Poland, in UK as well. So when we talk about like Europe, yes, UK is not a part of Europe anymore, but we should also consider the UK market when we talk about that region. So we also solve the logistics. We find the best 3PL service provider for your products, and we locate it in the best area or in the best fulfillment service, which is the best in that category. Because if you would like to do furniture, it's different. If you would like to do cosmetics, if it's different. If you would like to do apparel, fashion, it's different. So each and every 3PL is specialized in certain categories. So we know the best and we work with the best. And then the third part is the pricing. So pricing and the marketing of the product. So we also do that for the brands. So if a brand wants to scale from US to Europe or to UK, then we act as a merchant of record, if necessary, importer of record as well, because we have companies in the UK, we have companies in Germany, we have companies in the Middle East. So we can act as importer of record and then also act as a merchant of record. We know where to store the products. We know how to ship the products to the final consumers. And also we know how to price the products because we are like doing already business in a lot of categories, in a lot of countries in this region. So we know we can do all the unit cost calculations. What we need is the cost of goods sold. So from our perspective, so When we know the our buying price, we can calculate the sales price and then decide with the brand how much should be the final consumer, and then we transparently show who is making how much money: the platforms, the logistics service provider, us, and also the brand itself. We just like act as a platform. Generally, like Amazon or other platforms take 15%, and we add just like another 5% on top of it. That's all what we take, and then basically we do the all the heavy lifting for the brands on that front.
So you're the operator as well.
Yes, we act
Everything.
as right.
Yeah. So basically, from the point of view of the brand looking to do the expansion, they're signing an agreement with you, sending you product, and then waiting for a paycheck. If
Yes,
we want to simplify it to that level, because you guys will handle everything else, and you'll decide on which marketplaces to list, whether it's Amazon or otherwise, which country to list. Like if I'm saying if there's limited stock, because
yeah.
people like if somebody wants to start out with like a small investment, it's like probably the question here is like how small of an investment can somebody get started with that doesn't require you to put up like hundreds of thousands worth of inventory to make it into all of these different places. Like how do you decide?
That's also what we basically want to do, because we share the risk here. You know, when you put your inventory to FBA, you are getting charged right away, right? So
Yeah, storage.
Amazon starts charging you storage. We don't. I think that's the most important part, how we differentiate, because we make our calculations. We look at the traction, we look at competition, we look at the pricing, and then we decide on a certain amount. That could be like few pallets to start with, and then store these items in our warehouses. Okay, so um, we don't charge the brand for a storage fee. We basically, that's our risk. That's why we also uh, be as conservative as the brand itself, because they finance the products, we finance the storage. So that's why it's a win-win or 50-50 risk sharing
Mm.
from that perspective. So that's why we start always we are always on the conservative part of the table. Even if the brands wants to send more, we said okay, let's start with small steps, and then later on we scale up the business. So we have, for instance, a toilet paper manufacturer um, which wanted to start in Germany. A year ago, we were selling only a few items. We were getting like one or two orders every day. Now we
Mhm.
get 100 orders every day. So, but we didn't start with okay, just send like one container of toilet papers. It
Mhm.
doesn't work like that. It doesn't work in any kind of other marketplace. It doesn't work. I mean, the rules are not super different than Amazon. On Amazon, also, you want to scale, you need to go step by step. So basically, it's the same structure, and the brands also who have experience on the US should basically understand this, because they have also gone through a similar path. So they didn't get like hundreds of orders the first day
Mhm.
uh, launch the products, right? So
Takes
it's
time.
been a ramp up. There's always a ramp up period. The same is true for the European marketplace, even if you start on Amazon. The thing is, you have a head start because you can move all your listings and ratings and reviews from US to any other European marketplace, to a UK marketplace or German marketplace, whatever. It's being translated if it's like in French or in German, whatever. So basically, you don't start with zero ratings and reviews. You start with already, like if you have like hundreds of reviews, you start with that. So basically, that also gives a head start, but this doesn't of course necessarily say that you will start like with hundreds of orders every day. So there's a ramp up period. We know it how it works. We can estimate, and then we replenish the products as the sales comes.
Amazing. Yeah, man, this has been very insightful. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this. I mean, this has been opening to me the world, right? Because you've experienced it, and you've seen a lot of things in China and Brazil, and also just being exposed to this type of all these marketplaces are things that I think most people have never heard of. I've explored a little bit into Europe and finding out things like Bold is bigger than Amazon. It's kind of
Yeah,
mind blowing, right? But there's so much out there. Same thing with Allegro. I have family in Poland, and like I remember visiting like 7 8 years ago, just hearing a little bit about it, and then visiting last year, and like people are just using it every day. It became Amazon basically, right? And
yeah.
so there's Amazon is a lot of opportunity. Other marketplaces are even more.
Yeah.
So I think like there's just so much to see there. So I appreciate you sharing all your insight. We're out of time for today. I still have more questions, so maybe maybe we'll do a part two in the future.
Perfectly. I'm already looking forward.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.